field and a multiple aircraft attack. And the next one, though, is one of... here you are, you've got a camera in the nose of a weapon. It is probably either an American rocket-powered bomb, AGM-130, or just a glide bomb. It's basically a bomb with wings. And the navigator basically can guide it in with a joystick. And there you are.
You can see extraordinary detail there, can't you?
Yes, and we first saw this during the Gulf War, and it's the missiles where basically you can select the window to fly it through. Here we have a bridge, and in the Pentagon press conference, which is still underway at the moment, they have said they are going to target bridges, cut Kosovo off from the rest of Yugoslavia to hamper the operation and hamper reinforcements and supplies going in. And there you are, that's just before it cut out. So we're looking now at Serb TV. We think, oh, that looks like a bridge going, yes. So there you are, you have wonderful confirmation from the Serbian TV that both sides of the argument, as it were.
Now, from all sides now...
They will hear any threat before they see it.
Probably the one sound I wouldn't want to hear is a torpedo in the water. That would be very frightening.
3 decks below, as orders come in, they begin the process of loading cruise missiles. On a surface ship, a Tomahawk missile is usually loaded into the deck launcher in port and never seen again until it's eventually fired. That's not the case on a submarine. As they watch and wait, torpedo men think back to the first launch that now seems so long ago.
Just want the missiles to do what they're supposed to do, because we do all our efforts and do all our maintenance and everything to make sure our system works. So now they're in the hands of the missile. Captain, sir, firing order verified. Firing orders verified.
The launch is captured by the sub's periscope camera. Even in black and white, it is fearsome. The missile's rocket booster ignites below the sea before blinding the camera as it breaks the surface. The whole process, from battle stations to stand down, has taken just 18 minutes.
Well done, professionally executed. Carry on.
There is no celebration, just the satisfaction that what they once trained to do is now what they do well. Martin Savage, CNN, aboard the USS Norfolk, beneath the Adriatic.
Onward, F5.
According to NATO, throughout the holiday weekend, American B-52 and B-1B bombers will continue to pound Serb targets from their base in Gloucestershire.
Kosovo can't be reached without big losses, and it will be even harder to occupy it and remain there without big losses, whoever the enemy is. We don't want American, English, French and German troops to die in Kosovo and leave their bones there.
But airstrikes alone have failed to prevent the ethnic cleansing. The Kosovan capital, Pristina, is said to be like a ghost town, and the use of ground troops in Kosovo may yet have to be contemplated by Allied commanders. Paul Brennan, Sky News.
Themselves pressured to go in if it becomes the only way to finish what's been started. Eve Richings, Sky News.
On course from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, the reconnaissance ship Liman, symbolic gesture of Russia's defiance of NATO. The Defense Ministry claims she carries state-of-the-art monitoring technology and explained the lack of weapons as proof of her suitability for the job. But also in Sevastopol, there was no mistaking the hardware being loaded onto other naval ships. Russia has cleared passage for up to 7 through the Bosporus Channel, should the government decide to beef up its flotilla. A so far unfulfilled gesture to match the heated public rhetoric raging in Moscow.
Don't look at soldiers have spent today building a tent village. It'll give shelter to a few thousand Kosovar refugees tonight. 20,000 spent last night sleeping in the open here at Blace, just inside the Macedonian border. The country's government said tonight it can no longer cope with the influx of refugees. Some of its neighbours in the region are in the same position. Aid agencies say their operations in the Balkans are also close to being overwhelmed. Almost 250,000 refugees have so far fled Kosovo. Providing clean drinking water is a priority. Oxfam today flew supplies and sanitation equipment into the area. Feeding the displaced is a battle. It's hard to move supplies around, though more food, clothes and medicines are being shipped in. Israel, Italy, France and the UK are among the countries sending aid. There'll be more relief flights in the next week, though some governments in this crisis-hit region are urging the international community to fly refugees out to ease their burden. Helen Wright, ITN.
Even as they prepared for further combat missions tonight, the frustration for NATO pilots is growing. Thick and low cloud over Kosovo is still hampering their bombing raids. But America's highly capable all-weather B-1 bomber has arrived at an RAF base and is already making its first bombing runs over Yugoslavia. NATO is also taking comfort from the fact that Milosevic and his forces are critically short of fuel.
Last night's attacks therefore continued to focus upon his fuel supplies, especially in the Kosovo region. And this will further inhibit the ability of his forces to repress the Kosovar Albanians.
The West is deploying ever greater military resources to the Balkans. And when the weather finally clears, Serb forces can expect an overwhelming NATO air assault. Complicating that military picture, Russia today dispatched its first naval vessel to the Adriatic, a reconnaissance ship designed to monitor the war. And in Belgrade, Russian MPs were meeting President Milosevic, although there's no sign of a fresh diplomatic initiative underway. At the same time, the Yugoslav leadership has declared it's ready to hand over to Moscow the wreckage of America's top-secret stealth fighter. Indeed, reports from Moscow tonight say that key parts of the aircraft that crashed 6 days ago have already been flown to Russia for analysis. Robert Moore, ITN.
Earlier today, they said, A, the new Harrier force was fully operational, the reinforcements, and the Tornadoes based in RAF Bruggen in Germany, the quote is, are ready for action, which might suggest tonight will be their first mission. Whether they end up being based in Italy or fly their missions from Germany, we don't yet know. But they are hoping to use their good, low-level, bad weather capabilities to come in under the cloud which should change within the next 48 hours.
The B-1 bomber.
Last night, its first mission in this particular campaign, first saw active service in Operation Desert Fox, seems to have used satellite-guided bombs to attack targets. They said it attacked a staging area, a large staging area in Kosovo for armoured forces, and the class ones, they've said it's very accurate, it hit its target, but we can't confirm it.
Do you know one thing that's not mentioned?
Or cruise missile ships. Critics say air power alone won't work, but Mr. Clinton shows no sign of changing course.
So this air campaign has been much more rapid in getting up and getting underway than any sort of ground operation could be.
The president was briefed on U.S. government and private humanitarian relief efforts, and those on hand echoed the White House in saying Serb troops, not the NATO airstrikes, are to blame for the crisis.
This is depopulation, and the only thing similar to it in recent history is Stalin's social engineering in the 30s.
U.S. and NATO troops will take a larger role in the relief efforts in Albania and Macedonia. Giant C-5 transports at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware were being loaded with more than 500,000 meals and other supplies for delivery to Albania.
Here that take off and patrol, provide cover to NATO ships in the Adriatic. Also, there are aircraft that do patrols over Bosnia for the peacekeeping force there. So, of course, this air base is not exclusively for strikes against Yugoslavia. Matter of fact, it's very difficult for us here to find out exactly what each individual mission is going off to do because of the level of secrecy here.
Confirming the specific targets that were hit, but confirming that, yes, for the first time, downtown Baghdad was targeted. In the words of one official here, these were very high-profile targets, at least in the next 24 hours in downtown Belgrade. Joey?
All right, Jim, and to our viewers, you just there saw some protesters on a bridge in Belgrade protesting the recent events, and certainly the NATO strike coming so close to them in the Interior Ministry in Old Belgrade at this hour. This apparently are pictures from earlier in the day's events, protests, and you see many of the people wearing the target signals trying to tell NATO what they think of these strike operations. Those are pictures from Serbian TV. We'll take
as a result of cruise missiles fired from U.S. ships in the Adriatic. 7 cruise missiles from 2 U.S. warships fired at this complex of buildings in downtown Belgrade. We had an earlier report that the British submarine HMS Splendid also fired a cruise missile. Now it appears that may not have happened. That might have been in the plan, but that missile might not have gone off from the submarine. But at least 7 cruise missiles did hit the target. which the Pentagon says the next couple of days, and the expectation is at that point the pace of these NATO airstrikes will increase accordingly.
Loading weapons onto B-1 bombers at the airbase. Last night, the US Air Force flew in a further 100 support personnel to help maintain the 5 B-1s and 8 B-52 bombers taking part in the strikes.
Or Macedonia. And sources say NATO is about to add the U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt to its arsenal, along with 3 more cruise missile firing ships and a submarine. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, the Pentagon.
Helicopters, there have been requests for them to be brought to the region.
The United States government says it still has
Keel up to be a stealth ship.
There's no such thing as an invisible ship, but we can work within the laws of physics to try and help ourselves out. You'll notice, looking at the top side of the ship, that everything tends to be very angular.
Employing the same technology the Air Force uses to make its stealth fighters and bombers hard to spot on radar, the U.S. Navy worked to do the same with its new Arleigh Burke class of destroyers, all 9,000 tons of them. Almost every part of the ship's superstructure is angled in some way to reflect away rather than return an enemy's radar signal. It's the return that gives a ship away. The stealthy design goes down right to some of the smallest of details. The lifelines, for example, on an older vessel would be 1-inch poles. Here, there's steel cable covered with rubber. Stanchions set at an angle in the deck and diamond shape. Items on the ship's exterior that can't be reshaped are instead covered with a special rubber coating that absorbs radar energy. That even includes the ship's gong. But it's not just a ship's shape that can give it away. So can heat, especially from its engines.
What we want to do is reduce the infrared signature that's put off by the ship's exhaust system. We have the boundary layer infrared suppression system, which brings air from outside the ship into the exhaust system, mixes it in with the exhaust, reduces the temperature, and it reduces the ability of a heat-seeking missile.
The Gonzales also has a special system that uses air bubbles to greatly cut back the destroyer's noise as it passes through the ocean, making it tough to find with sonar. The end result, in war games in which the Gonzales had to penetrate enemy defenses to strike a prime target, the destroyer has a perfect record of kills.
We have completed 2 different exercises as we work through what we call the inter-deployment training cycle. And the ship, during those exercises, was able to, as an opposing force, go against the opposite force and sneak up on them, basically, undetected.
Aboard the USS guided missile destroyer Gonzales, when it comes to possible detection by a hostile force, out of sight and out of mind is the best policy. Martin Savage, CNN, aboard the USS Gonzales in the Adriatic.
Troops to Kosovo within a matter of days. A special unit in North Carolina is on permanent alert for such tasks. Tens of thousands of troops could later join them, but that would take several weeks and might mean years of fighting in the Balkans. President Clinton is reluctant to take the irreversible step of putting troops on the ground in Kosovo. He's aware.
No, but certainly on the film footage we saw, and this is of the B-1Bs being loaded, the bombs they're loading there look as if they are one of the US Air Force's more modern systems called the JDAM, the Joint Direct Attack Munition, which is basically a standard iron bomb, a dumb bomb, but it has a GPS, Global Positioning Satellite System, fixed onto it, and that gives it much greater accuracy and it steers down to the target. A few other pictures of the bombs being loaded on there look as if they're actually just absolutely standard bombs with no guidance. And there you have a huge rack of them. B-1 can carry up to 82 500-pound bombs, which they would, if they're using those sort of dumb munitions, they will bomb with radar and GPS to make sure the plane knows where it is. I suspect the feeling in terms of bombing Kosovo now is so many areas have been cleared of Kosovar Albanians. Quite frankly, if you do bomb down there, practically the only people you're going to hit are going to be Serb security police and the Yugoslav army. And I think there's a certain element of saying in the following areas, don't worry, there are no friendlies there. There are only basically enemies.
Now, I stressed that it was a very serious problem and has got very, very much more serious over the past 24 hours. Let's just start up here on the Montenegrin border. You're all aware that there are problems in Montenegro, and this is impeding the movement of refugees through the Sandjak and onwards. Moving down now onto the Albanian border, this little pass up here, the Kafa Prujit, which I pointed out yesterday, has seen another 10,000 people cross. Further south at Marina, here in the Drin Valley, 25,000 people crossed yesterday. Speaking to the OSCE officers in Tirana this morning, they estimate that since the 24th of March, over 165,000 people have moved into Albania. Moving now down to the more familiar Jankovic crossing point north of Skopje. There are about 25,000 people waiting to cross in this area. Backing up the road to Jaroslav and north to Pristina, there are another 200,000 people. In effect,